So we are here to talk about choice and voice. And John Spencer is one of my favorite go-to people in kind of looking at why choice and voice and having and empowering our students. So one of my favorite quotes is, if we want student buy-in, we need to start with student ownership. To me, if we're always driving what our students are doing, if we're creating recipes and just asking them to mix the ingredients together and spit out what we've asked them to spit out, we're not giving them the opportunity, or we're not helping them build the skills they're going to truly need outside of the school building. And it's a lot more fun for us as teachers if we give students the choice over how they're showcasing their learning, what they're learning, in any ways that we possibly can. And there's some easy ways to add choice and voice for those of us just getting started. And there's definitely some ways that we can level up as we get more comfortable and as our students get to know what it means to have choice and voice. A lot of times when I first started this with my students, they sort of were like, wait a minute, well, what am I supposed to do? What do you want me to do? How many should I have? How many sentences should there be? Do you want me to do the news article, or do you want me to do the podcast? It was a lot of that nervousness of thinking that usually they were expecting me to say, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z. How about you, Jody? What have you found when you've been working with students on choice and voice?
That is such a great question. So I always think, like there's not a one size fits all, right? Like we're all over the place, especially with our students. And so I'm always looking for ways to find opportunities that will create engagement and I always keep in mind the student-centered learning aspect of things. I'm looking for ways to build confidence with my students. And also I want my students to feel personally invested in their learning. It kind of goes with what John Spencer's quote is right there. And it gives them that active role in sharing their understanding. And any way I can provide that with my students is a win for me and a win for my students.
Absolutely. And it just makes it a smoother experience in class for sure. When my kids know that what they are saying and what they want to show me matters, and that I trust that they can deliver high quality work when they have some of that autonomy and ownership for sure. And I know that I've seen some real wins with that, and it's made teaching so much more fun for me as well. Differentiation can be really challenging, and adding choice is a way to help the students differentiate naturally for themselves, because it's hard for us to personalize sometimes for all of the different students that we have in our classrooms. And I know that right now in the world that we're living, where whether your kids are in person, whether they're remote, or many of our students were doing some kind of hybrid. And so one of the things that's been a consistent problem, or a consistent thing that's come up with teachers, is lack of engagement from their students, especially if they're not in the classroom with them. And so by giving students choice, that's a way to build engagement back in, because since kids are choosing how they want to share their learning, that builds that ownership piece so that they're ready to jump in and dive in. So today we're going to really look at the how do I do this? How can I do this with Smart Learning Suite Online? So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to end my presentation here so that I can show you how we can do this. So as a teacher, when I'm in my presentation or my lesson, I have these 3 white lines in the left corner, and I can choose those, and I'm going to end my lesson to return to my Smart dashboard. Okay, now some of you guys might be button pushers like I am. I'm someone who wants to be doing as I'm watching. I don't want to just watch. So if you're a button pusher, I'm going to get you started on so that you can push buttons right along with me. If you are someone who wants to just sit back and watch, you've had a long day, that's great too. You don't have to do with me. You can just watch along, and you will be getting a recording of this. So you can always use the recording to teach yourself slower when you have time. So I just want to talk really quickly, because there's two ways that you might want to get connected to Smart Learning Suite Online. I worked in a Google district for the years that I was teaching. I am really into Google Drive. That's where I live. Most of the customers and teachers and school districts I work with are Google districts, so that's kind of where I spend most of the time. Jody has some customers and some school districts that she works with that are instead really focused on Microsoft and using their amazing tools as well. So there's kind of 2 different avenues. Now I'm going to show you, if you are a Google district, and you are someone who wants to push some buttons with me, what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to open your Google Drive account, your school's Google Drive account. And Jody's going to put this information in the chat, and I'm going to walk through this with you the first time. If you are in a Google district, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your Google Drive. You're going to click New. You're going to click More. And many of you probably will see a Smart Learning Suite app as an option. If you do not see a Smart Learning Suite app, you can always click Connect More Apps, and you can search for Smart Learning Suite and add it yourself. So you can always do that. So that's my my Google users. You're going to click on New, More, Smart Learning Suite. You will be prompted to sign in. The teacher sign in is in the bottom right corner, and you'll sign in with your school's Google account. Okay. The rest of you, if you are not using Google, or perhaps you don't have Google integrated or Smart integrated with Google, you guys are going to go to suite.smarttech.com, S-U-I-T-E, suite.smarttech.com. Jody will also throw this into the chat. Now, remember, today is not a getting started, so we're not going to look at every detail about Smart Learning Suite online today. We're really going to focus about how we can use this tool to create choice boards, okay, and add voice and choice into our classroom. So again, Google users, you'll click New, More, Smart Learning Suite from your Google Drive. If you're not a Google user, you would go to suite.smarttech.com and sign in with either your Microsoft or your Google account, your email, Microsoft or Google email. All right, so let's get started. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you a couple of different options that you can do to leverage some choice boards that you already have, or to create some quickly and easily, or add some of that choice and voice element into your teaching. So we're going to focus on this big green bar where it says Add Activities. So I'm going to click that. Now there's a bunch of buttons here, and we're not going to look at all the buttons. Like I said, there's a Getting Started webinar that might be for you if you want to learn about all these buttons, but they're all pretty easy. If you click the buttons, you'll find some cool things. The first thing I want to talk about is leveraging choice boards that you might already have built. So I already have some choice boards that I used to use when I had Google, when I was teaching and using Google, that I haven't used in Smart Learning Suite that I would like to. Or you might have found great choice boards that are on Teacher Pay Teachers, or found for free on the internet. There's lots of places to find great choice boards. Today, I'm going to show you how I can import some of that content, some of those choice boards, and use them with my students. So the first button you see over here is this Import Resource button. So when I click on that, for me, because I'm a Google user, I'll have the option of pulling from my Google Drive or from my device, from my computer. So I could pull a PDF or a PowerPoint or a Smart Notebook file from my device, or I could pull a Google Slide, Google Doc, or even if I have a PDF in my Google Drive, I can pull that in too. Today, I'm pulling in a lesson from my Google Drive. So I'm going to just click on here, and it's going to pop in a window where I'm able to select the lesson, the activity that I want. So I know that when I was teaching Shakespeare, I had a choice board that I liked to use. Let's see, I know it's in here. Let's do Google integration.
While Casey is doing that, one of the things that just to make note of is that if you are a Microsoft user and you go to suite.smarttech, there is also, or if you're a Microsoft Teams user, you can integrate Smart Learning Suite online within your Teams account. All you have to do is find Smart Learning Suite. When you look at more on the left-hand side in your toolbox, you can do that too. She's using Google, and so her Smart Learning Suite online account is connected to her Google Drive, and so she can go and find what she's looking for.
Yes, but if that's not the case, you can still pull off PDFs, PowerPoint, Smart Notebook files from your computer itself. So here I found my Shakespeare choice board that I like to use with my students that I've built in the past inside of Google. So I'm going to select that. And when I do, it automatically takes me to editing mode so that I can make some changes and add some additional pieces if I want to this page. So, or to this lesson, for instance. So here it is, it's going to pull in my choice board. I notice, oops, I have an extra page here that I don't want. So I'm going to delete that page. And here's my choice board. So one of the things to note is I have active links that were on my Google slide. And when I pulled that into Smart Learning Suite Online, those links are still active. So if I want my students to click to learn about insults from Shakespeare, that website will, this link will take them to that website. One thing that I want to note here is I like to give my students some space to share questions or challenges they have so that I can come and check to see how they're doing while they're working on their project, and I can give them feedback, respond to their questions really nicely and easily here because I can interact with my students. One thing else that I want to point out is I can add an infinitely cloned object so my kids can click and drag and show me which options they're choosing to complete on this board. So if I look above my page here, I have an A if I wanted to add additional text, and next to the A, I have a mountain. So if I click the mountain, I can actually search for an image online, a being safe search with pictures that are Creative Commons licensed and free for us to use. I can add a web link to take my students somewhere, but I can also select images that I have saved on my computer. In this case, I know I have an image that I want to use, so I'm going to go grab it right quick. I know it's right in here. Yes, I want to use this check mark. So I'm going to add this check mark. I can resize it and place it down here in this space. And now notice what I can do. If I click on my check mark, I will get a blue square with a blue circle and a white down caret. If I click on it, one of my options is to infinitely clone this object. So just like that, now my students can click and drag the check mark to show which 3 tasks they're choosing to complete. Now, if you look at the bottom of your screen here below my page, so I looked up first and I saw the mountain and the text, so I could add things to my Google slide or my PDF. But if I look down, I also have the ability to convert this to an activity. Currently, this page is view only for students, but I want students to be able to move the check mark. I want them to be able to type questions or challenges they're having. So I'm going to convert this to an activity. And I have 2 options. I can make it an individual handout where each kid gets their own copy, or I can make it a collaborative workspace where I put kids into teams. So if I wanted my kids to complete the Shakespeare choice board as a team in small groups, I could make it a workspace. In this case, I'm going to have each student do their own work. So I'm going to make it an individual handout. And just like that, I've built a choice board using content I already had, using a choice board I already used with my students, but now I've made it more interactive, and I could even layer in a page where they could turn in their work or even complete their work right within this lesson as well. Jody, any thoughts or questions before we jump on?
I'm just like so excited that I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like I can bring in content that I already have, and all I have to do is just kind of layer it with some more interactive pieces to it, because that gives my students a little more ability to, like, keep track of what they're doing, add their own text, their own images. I'm a very visual learner, so this totally speaks to me. I love that. Casey, one thing I noticed, and I don't know if you're going to talk about it, is I love the audio feature. Like this might be a page that you could add that audio to, right?
Absolutely. So if you notice in the bottom left corner, we have a little guy that looks like he's talking. I can actually record directions for my students so they understand what they're supposed to do. So whether I'm doing the lesson with them live in class or whether they're working from home, they can listen to me over and over again. For our emergent readers, for our English language learners, or just for those students that need that extra direction, we can easily add that audio piece, which is huge.
I love this. Yeah.
Things like this, great for homework assignments, great for those spelling tic-tac-toe boards that we do for some of our kids. Tons of ways to use this for that homeschool connection as well. All right, so what we noticed before, and I noticed I'm not going to leave this lesson. Ordinarily, I would not build, I'm going to build another choice board now on the moon. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have a Shakespeare choice board and a moon chase board in the same lesson, right? But to save for time today, I'm going to build them all together. Ordinarily, when you're done with your choice board and done adding any extra content using this blue bar in the bottom left corner, you would hit finish editing and it would take you back to your home screen and then you could build something new. Today, I'm just going to layer a bunch of choice boards together. And so if you notice in the bottom left corner, we have a blue bar with a plus button. So I'm going to click on that. So remember that the first thing I did was I started with content I already had. So if you already have choice boards you use with your kids, use those, but maybe add that infinite cloner, something along those lines for kids to mark and respond to what assignments they're completing. But the other thing I want to point out is game-based activities. I bet you don't think about games and choice as the same thing. But there's two tools I really love to use in game-based activities to get our kids thinking and making choices. So I'm going to click game-based activities, and I'm going to highlight a couple of my favorites. So flip out is one of them. The first time I saw flip out, I was like, oh, flashcards. But then I thought, what if I turn this into a choice board or a task board of things that my students could do? That would be huge. The other thing that I love is label reveal. So when I first saw label reveal, I was like, okay, so you could use it to label different parts of a cell or different parts of a math problem or something like that. But then I thought, what if I made this a choice board? That would be huge. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is. So we're going to make a label reveal on the moon. Let's say we're studying the moon and I want my kids to do some reflection tasks on what they've learned. I'm going to click on label reveal. And it takes you to a wizard that helps guide you through building. So here it says drag an image or browse for one. I don't have an image saved, so I'm actually going to click to browse for one. What's really cool is notice I can select an image that I have saved already on my computer, but notice also I can add online images. So I can do a being saved search for Creative Commons licensed images. So I'm going to search for the moon. And I'm going to kind of scroll down until I see one that I really like. Lots of good pictures of the moon.
They are so good. And this is so wonderful.
I know. I don't know. Oh, you know what? Here's one that has the different parts of, I'm going to choose this one. This looks like a good one. So I can click on the moon and just like that, the image is there. No prep work on my behalf. Now what I can do is I can add individual labels to the moon, to each of the moons. So I could do 9 different choices, or I could do 6 choices, 3 choices, up to me. So if I click anywhere on my picture, a little label pops up. So let's say I want my students to do a comic, and I can type comic in the title, click the down arrow, and that allows me to add some notes. So I want them to create a comic showing the relationship between the moon and the tides on Earth. All I'm having to do is type. And if I have my question set to the side already, I could even just copy and paste. Now I'm going to do one more, and then for time's sake, I'm not going to do 6 or 9 because I want to show you some other things. But I'm going to click anywhere on my picture. So I'm going to click on the middle moon now. And here's another one. I can always move this and stretch it across my space. And this time I'm going to do model. And click that down arrow. And I want you to create a model of the phases of the moon. So I can have a variety of different tabs where my students will be able to choose different tasks. I can even click off of here and make one that's set to directions. And I can say, choose 2 tasks to complete. And note, our students don't live just on the computer. There's a variety of ways that they like to work, right? So we can use other medium in our classroom. We can use posters. We can use our make and space areas. We can use clay. It doesn't have to be all done in this space. Once I'm done, I hit finish. And just like that, my label reveal is done, ready for my students to come and click and see what the different tasks are for them to try and complete. Any questions, Jody?
No, everybody is liking what we're doing so far. So I love the label reveal. I think it's kind of that hidden treasure inside Smart Learning Suite Online. I love that you added that image. And how simple would that be to change that up to a math or a science concept, or maybe a plot diagram or a visual of something that you're already reading? I just really like that a lot.
You know, speaking of that, I love being able to reuse task boards or choice boards so that you don't have to build them over and over again. So this time I'm going to click that same blue plus button and I'm going to go back to game-based activities. And this time I'm going to go to flip out. And then again, I'm not going to build the full choice board because I want to hopefully show you two other pieces in our few minutes that we have left. But I'm going to click on flip out. Again, this is a game that takes you to your choice board. I want to point out a couple of things. This is like a flashcard. So we have a front and a back, right? So let's imagine I want to have a choice board for novels. Every time we read a picture book, every time we read a chapter book, or every time we read a novel, I want to have these go-to questions or tasks for my students to complete. So maybe I want to have vocab as one of the tasks. And I might say, I want you to create 2 comics for 2 new vocabulary words. And maybe I want to do figurative language. And I want my students to sketch an image for 3 examples of figurative language.
And while Casey's adding that, what I really like is that you could add images here too, right, Casey? So if you have like some fun images that you want to add, you now have the Being Safe search. So or you can do what you did earlier, and that is to add your own images if you already have them ready. But you can also add the Being Safe search. So go out and start searching for some really fun images that you can add to your flip out.
Yeah, so going off of that, you might have, as Jody was talking, you might have noticed that I clicked on the mountain here and I added an image of some music notes. So my question might be, have my students write a rap or a song from the main character's perspective. So you can add images or text. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. One of the other things I want to point out is we have some ready-made backgrounds that you can use easily, but I can also customize my background. So today I'm going to customize because I don't want to use the jungle or the space or the simple. I'm going to choose custom, hit next. And notice here, I can click on the little mountain, these little triangles in the top right corner, and I can search for an image. I can either select one that I have, or in this case, I don't have one already selected. So I'm going to search for books because this is my choice board on books. And maybe I want to do like book clip art. I think I want to do that. So I can come and search for some books that I might want to have in the background, click on OK, and hit save. And hit finish. So just like that, now I have a choice board of different questions or things I might ask my students about any novel that we read. So I can pull this up and use it over and over again, and my kids can pick different tasks for each novel or each picture book that we do.
So Casey, one of the questions I have as we're moving forward on that is, like, you have all those really great flip out cards, and you can have up to 52, just like a deck of cards. I mean, they would,
Yeah.
you have 16 that you can show on the screen. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is, like, when we're talking about student voice and choice, it doesn't mean that you have to do everything inside Smart Learning Suite Online, right?
Exactly. So if I were, for instance, to do this flip out, I might have the flip out open and my students might be doing the tasks in their interactive journal. They might be using some extra tools. So maybe if they're doing a rap or a song, perhaps they're going to record that using Flipgrid. And they want to use Flipgrid's video ability and record themselves. Or maybe they're going to use, maybe I have a student who really loves coding. And so my student's going to use Scratch to create an image for their figurative language. And maybe they're doing, let's say, personification, and they're going to create something where it shows personification from that sentence in that novel or in that picture book using coding. I know I had quite a few big coders, big Scratch users of my students, and so they were always angling to get to use Scratch for their activities. And as long as they could show to me that it would make sense and that they could do it in a timely manner to complete their task, I was all for it.
Tracy it has a great suggestion. So, because it's March Madness, there's a whole bunch of different March Madness themes. And so she's thinking about doing a customized background with the March Madness theme, right? And also remember, and this goes to, like, you could put like a tiny URL or a bit.ly on the back of that. I'm a big Flipgrid user, so I believe that Smart Learning Suite Online integrates beautifully with a whole bunch of different tools. It's like you don't have to pick one or the other, but it can actually integrate and work beautifully together. And so lots of times when I'm doing a choice board and I want my students to do a Flipgrid response, I'll add that on the back of the card. And then my students, it'll have the short link there, and then my students can just go to it. Unfortunately, at this time on the flip out cards, when you add a link, it is not a live link. But you can add it to another page as an external web link too.
Right. And just note that this plus button, there's some other ways that like your students can do some of the work right here within Smart Learning Suite Online. And I'll kind of highlight that in just a moment. But again, it doesn't have to all live and breathe in here, right? There's a lot of tools, and sometimes giving your students choice on product and choice on which product to use. So whether they want to do a Google slideshow or a PowerPoint, or whether they want to do a Scratch, or maybe they want to do a poster. Maybe they want to do a podcast. Giving them those options is really important too. All right, so speaking of options, one of the things that we want to do is use some of the stuff that already exists in Smart Learning Suite Online. So I'm going to click on that same blue bar with the white plus button. And so far we talked about importing our own content, and we talked about using game-based activities, label, reveal, and flip out to create choice boards. But I also want you to think about how you can leverage those graphic organizers that live here, because they're customizable. There's 21 different graphic organizers. Today, Jody and I we're really excited about this idea for using the brainstorming web. So one of the ideas that we had is a lot of times we create the choice board, right? It's all on us. Well, what if we had our students create the choice board? Because we can put our kids in collaborative workspaces, I could actually create a brainstorming web and have my kids work in teams to come up with a bunch of different choices of things they could do to reflect on a novel, reflect on a book, reflect on a project that we're working on, anything along those lines. And then I can turn that over to my students and they can choose from one of the ideas their peers came up with. So I love that idea and encourage that too. Don't always do all the work yourself. And plus the kids come up with some pretty creative ideas. You may have to vet some of them, but they come up with some good ideas. So a couple of my favorite tools to use for choice board. I love using content mapping. You have 4 choices built in right there really easily that you can do. I also love using this 6 box right here, this table 6 box. This is a great one for choice board. So what I click on it and I add it. So right now it's just a blank space, but I have control to really personalize it. So let's imagine one of the things I did a lot with my younger kids is word work choice boards, right? So I can actually give them 6 different options of things to do. If you look up above, I have the ability to add text or images. So for instance, let's say I want my kids to be go on a word hunt. I can click on the A and type word hunt. I can move this word hunt anywhere I want, and I want it to be bigger. So I'm going to click on it and I'm just going to pull this blue dot until it's about the size I want and move it where I want. And notice I can click that down arrow and I can lock this in place so my kids can't move it. I also can add an image here. So I can, let's say I want to search for a detective clip art and see if I find one that I like. Let's see. Oh, I like this guy. He's a good one.
Oh, I like him too.
So I can resize him, put him over here, and I can even give my kids an example. So maybe I want them, I can say, choose a spelling word and see how many words you can build with those letters.
So Casey, I'm thinking out loud here because a couple people are asking, about the link. You can add external links onto like this page. Think about the flip out cards that Casey was just showing you. Maybe right after the flip out card, you have this graphic organizer of 6 different boxes, right? You could add a live link on this page. So if your students are doing a flip out card and you want them to go to an external link that you have as a tiny URL, you can actually add it to this page if you wanted to.
Yes, exactly. So right here, if I click on the mountain right up here, I can actually add a web link. So let's say if for my younger students, maybe I want them to go to a certain activity on Starfall to practice. Maybe one of their 6 choices is to go to Starfall. So I can click on starfall.com. I might have to actually, let's go. So let's go to starfall.com. You could do it, Newsella, any of those types of things. I'm just going to come grab this right quick. So I can paste this here and I can add it. And what I can do is, so one of my centers might be, I want my students to go to Starfall. So I can click on here and I can say Starfall. And that's their task for this particular spot. So you can really personalize this to be what you want it to be. I can add a title in the blue bar, actually add all of my spelling words or my sight words or my word family words in this blue bar too, for my students to easily see and access as well. Other questions, Jody, that have come up?
No, but I think we're going to have to connect with Tracy. She's got some good ideas.
Oh, good. I'm always looking for new ideas, Tracy. So keep them coming. All right. So one last thing I want to talk about this. I was inspired by Caitlin Tucker, and I hope all of you guys follow Caitlin Tucker on Twitter. She's an amazing person to follow. You can learn so much from her. But she had a really good article that I read recently on choice boards. And one of the things that can sometimes hold teachers back is it can feel like it's a lot of work to build a choice board. Hopefully we've shown you today that you can build them relatively simply and easily. Think about how many we've gotten started in just a few minutes today. But I know that can be overwhelming, especially when you're first getting started. You had a great idea. So I know I love doing this with my personal kids all the time, that this versus that. So do you like the beach or do you like the mountains? Jody, what's your favorite this versus that question?
I like what you just said about this versus that with the mountains, but also your favorite animals. I mean, I can see it kind of becoming a graphic or like an intro to like I guess for kinders where they have to start sorting. So you could do it this versus that with animals, this versus that with something in science, maybe your habitats. I mean, it could be anything, right? Or it could just be for fun too.
Yeah, I mean, you can use that for lots and lots of ways. Like I used to do with my, we used to do a lot with my gifted kids. It's their favorite thing to do this is versus that, and then get into debates on them. And they had to support their answers. So it was lots of fun. But what Caitlin said was using the idea of this versus that. So you're giving your students sort of 2 options, right? You can either do this or you can do that. So they have some ownership, they have some choice, but it's a little bit more limited. It's also a good way when you're first introducing choice to your students, I think, as well. So I'm going to show you guys, there's multiple ways that we can do this. One of the ways is to use a graphic organizer like I did with this 6 box. We have a 2 column that would be great for this versus that. But today I'm going to show you how you can do it using one of my favorite tools called Shout It Out. I think Jody also loves Shout It Out like I do. So Shout Out is a great way for us to ask questions, have our kids brainstorm. There's a little video that will pop out to show you if you want to click on that magnifying glass. But you can have your kids, it's great for exit tickets, entrance tickets, KWL charts, all sorts of things. In this case, I'm going to do it as a this versus that. So I'm going to click on Shout It Out activity. Now you have a couple of different things. So at the top, you'll notice that you can do optionally add a question. So I'm going to imagine I would do this with vocabulary. So for vocabulary work, I always like to give my students choice on vocabulary work. So choose 4 words from the giver and do either this or that. Now I have to give them the 2 categories of this or the that. So notice I'm not going to do randomized. I'm going to choose categories. And I'm going to choose for category 1, we're going to do a Frayer model. So my students will be doing Frayer models for each of the this versus for all of their 4 vocabulary words. Or I have some students that really like to use more of a creative sketch experience. So we'll do sketch note for their ideas. Okay, so I've added these 2 titles, these 2 categories. I'm only letting my students have 2 options. I could also add in a 3rd or 4th option. I could even have this set up where my students have get to choose whether they do this individually on my own, or whether they want to work in pairs or a small group. So I can give my students I'm giving them multiple choices, right? They get choices on what they are doing and then how they're doing it. Are they doing it individually or with a partner or a pair or a group of students? So then I hit next. And notice I can use classic background, or I also have this custom background. In this case, I'm going to choose custom. And I'm going to add images to 2 of my options. So I'm going to add this, click this mountain, and I actually have a background, or Jody built this really quickly for me when we were talking earlier. So I'm going to come she made these cool little images. I can search online, but in this case, I have a good friend that likes to build and share with me.
You betcha.
So I'm going to come and grab my this and add it. And now I'm going to come and grab my that. And again, I could do a Bing Safe search as well. I don't have to have these things already made, but we love making backgrounds. Jody and I love creating things. And I can save. And I could even add some images here if I wanted to as well. I'm going to leave those blank for now, and I can hit finish. And just like that, I created a shout out where my students can shout out their names to which category. Do I want to do the Frayer model, or do I want to do the sketch note? Do I shout out their name? Do I want to work by myself or with a partner? Then those who want to work with partners can see whose name is listed and get up there and work together. So let me show you what that looks like really quickly, and then I think we'll be ready for some questions. I know we're kind of at the end of our time, so I'm going to hit finish editing. That takes me to my home screen. So I have a vocabulary work already, so I can show you guys what that shouted out looks like in real time, because I know it's a little bit harder to visualize. So I'm going to hit start, and I'm going to hit review results, because I did this with my students earlier. And notice, so I can see Jasmine and Cassidy plan on doing the Frayer model, the this, and I know Lilo, Kowalski, and Seesaw are planning on doing the sketch note, the that activity. If let's say Kowalski got in, he starts the sketch note and then he gets really frustrated and he realizes that's not what I want to do. The cool thing is Kowalski can come up to the board, or he can come over to me and talk to me, and we can discuss why he wants to switch, and we can drag his name over to the this. So if he does need to make that change, he's not locked in. We can have that conversation. So I hope you guys found some things that you guys can do right within Smart Learning Suite online to create some choice boards, give your students some choice and voice over their learning, simply and easily leveraging content you have, or starting with the tools that we have directly within Smart Learning Suite. Jody is going to be adding into the chat a bit.ly link for smart resources that will help you with a getting started guide. It'll encourage you to, I hope you'll join our community. Anyone that's passionate about education, you don't have to be an expert in SMART to join our global community, become a SMART ambassador. There's lots of different great tools here for you guys to access. The other thing is I want you guys to try it. Take this challenge and do it with your students in the coming weeks. Pick one thing that we talked about today to try. Either start with content you have and add an infinitely cloned object, or maybe start with a flip out or a label reveal, or use one of those graphic organizers, or even try that shout it out, the this versus that, and have your students choose what they want to do. And I'll be tweeting out later this week. Tomorrow, I'm going to be tweeting out a whole bunch of this versus that ideas that are all, some of them are inspired by Caitlin Tucker, and some of them are inspired by our teammates, that ways that we might use the this versus that. But we'll have lots of different examples of that and a few of these choice boards as well available to you.
All right. Well, Casey, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up for another successful webinar. So thank you, Casey, for facilitating this and everybody that joined us. And we look forward to seeing you at some future Ready, Set, Smart webinars. Our next one is on Monday. And of course, we have some other great ones coming up after that. So go out and have a great day.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jody.